The stormy evening was just like any other for Emily. She had worked at the Diner Delight for 3 years, juggling plates and smiles for customers who barely acknowledged her. The diner, though old and a little run-down, had a charm that kept locals coming back. But tonight, the charm seemed lost in the gloom of the rain hammering against the glass windows. Emily was wiping down a table near the window when she spotted it. A small, shivering dog crouched by the alley across the street. The street lamp illuminated its thin frame, drenched and trembling, its eyes filled with a silent plea. Emily paused, her heart tugged by the sight. She looked around the diner. Her boss, Mr. Grayson, was at the counter, scowling at his phone. Customers chatted loudly, oblivious to the world outside. She couldn't ignore the dog. "Just a moment," she whispered to herself, grabbing a small plate. She hurriedly piled it with leftover burger scraps and fries from the kitchen. Wrapping herself in her coat, she slipped outside, her heart pounding with both urgency and fear of getting caught. The dog looked up as she approached, its tail giving a hesitant wag. Emily crouched down, setting the plate before it. "Hey there, buddy. You must be starving," she said softly. The dog sniffed the food, then devoured it hungrily. Emily smiled despite the cold rain soaking her hair. For a moment, it felt like she had done something right in a world that often felt so wrong. But as she turned to head back inside, she froze. Mr. Grayson stood at the door, arms crossed, his face dark with anger. "What do you think you're doing, Emily?" he barked, his voice cutting through the rain. Her heart sank. "I was just wasting food on a filthy stray? Get inside. Now." Emily hesitated but obeyed, her cheeks burning with shame and frustration. Once inside, Mr. Grayson didn't wait for an explanation. "This is a business, not a charity. If you can't respect that, maybe you don't belong here." Before she could protest, he barked the words that felt like a slap. "You're fired." Emily stood outside the diner, the cold rain soaking her to the bone. Her hands trembled as she clutched her bag. Fired. Just like that. No second chances, no explanations. She looked down the street, her mind racing. Rent was due in 2 weeks, and she had no savings. She couldn't go home and face a roommate who had warned her about this dead-end job. Her only option now was to figure out her next steps. The dog was still there, huddled under the same street lamp. It had finished the food and was now watching her with wide, curious eyes. Emily sighed and approached it again, her heart aching. "Well, I guess we're both out in the cold tonight, huh?" She crouched beside the dog and gently stroked its damp fur. To her surprise, the dog leaned into her touch, its tail wagging softly. In that moment, the cold and the rain didn't matter. She had a friend, someone who needed her just as much as she needed them. "I can't leave you here," she whispered. "Come on." With the dog trotting beside her, Emily walked aimlessly through the city streets, searching for shelter. Most places were closed, and the few that were open wouldn't allow a stray dog inside. Finally, she found an abandoned bus stop with a small overhang. She sat down on the bench, the dog curling up at her feet. As she stared out at the rain, tears blurred her vision. How had her life come to this? She had always been kind, always tried to do the right thing. But kindness didn't pay the bills, and now she was homeless, jobless, and desperate. The dog rested its head on her lap, looking up at her with those soulful eyes. Emily stroked its fur, finding a small comfort in its presence. "At least I'm not alone," she murmured. Morning came with a golden sunrise, but Emily's spirits were still low. She and the dog wandered the streets, searching for food and a plan. The city was bustling now, people rushing to work, cars honking, life moving forward without a second glance at the struggling waitress and her furry companion. Emily stopped by a bakery, inhaling the scent of fresh bread. Her stomach growled, but her pockets were empty. She was about to walk away when an older woman stepped out, her arms full of bags. The woman looked at Emily, then at the dog. "You look like you could use this," she said, handing over a loaf of bread. Emily blinked, surprised. "Oh, thank you. I can't pay." "Nonsense," the woman interrupted with a smile. "Kindness is free." The words hit Emily like a wave. She nodded, her throat tight with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, as she sat on a nearby bench, sharing the bread with the dog. A man in a suit approached. He was tall, with kind eyes and an air of quiet authority. "Excuse me," he said. "I couldn't help but notice you and your dog. You seem like someone with a good heart." Emily frowned, unsure where this was going. "I try," she said cautiously. The man smiled. "I work with a rescue organization. We're always looking for compassionate people to help care for animals. Would you be interested?" Her heart skipped a beat. "You mean a job?" "Yes," he said. "It's not much to start, but it's honest work. And judging by how your dog trusts you, I'd say you're perfect for the role." Emily's mind raced. Could this be real? Could her kindness finally be paying off? The man introduced himself as Dr. Harris, a veterinarian who ran a local animal shelter. Emily followed him to the shelter, a modest but welcoming building filled with barking dogs and meowing cats. She felt a warmth she hadn't felt in years. Dr. Harris showed her around, explaining the work. "It's not glamorous," he said, "but it's meaningful. We need people who care, who see the value in every life." Emily nodded, her heart swelling with hope. "I'll do it," she said without hesitation. Her first few days at the shelter were tough but fulfilling. She cleaned kennels, fed animals, and learned the basics of animal care. The dog she had rescued stayed by her side, quickly becoming a favorite among the staff. As the days turned into weeks, Emily found herself thriving. She had a purpose now, a reason to get up in the morning. The shelter became her sanctuary, a place where her kindness was not just appreciated but celebrated. One afternoon, as Emily was cleaning out a kennel, a man walked into the shelter. He was impeccably dressed, with an air of importance that made everyone stop and take notice. "I'm looking for someone named Emily," he said. Emily stepped forward, wiping her hands on her apron. "That's me. Can I help you?" The man smiled. "My name is Mr. Daniels. I'm the CEO of a major pet food company. I heard about what you did for that stray dog, how you risked your job to help an animal in need." Emily's cheeks flushed. "It wasn't a big deal," she said, embarrassed. "On the contrary," Mr. Daniels said, "it was. Kindness like that is rare. I'd like to offer you a position in our company. We need people like you to help us develop programs for stray animals. The salary is generous and the benefits are excellent." Emily's jaw dropped. "Are you serious?" "Very," Mr. Daniels said. "We can't let talent like yours go to waste." Tears filled her eyes as she nodded. "Thank you," she whispered. From that moment on, Emily's life changed. She went from a struggling waitress to a respected advocate for animal welfare. And through it all, she never forgot the little stray dog that had started it all. Emily could hardly believe how far she had come. It had been 2 months since she started working at Mr. Daniels' company. Each morning, she woke up with a renewed sense of purpose, eager to make a difference. But as she adjusted to her new life, she couldn't shake the memory of her last day at the diner. The humiliation of being fired for an act of kindness still lingered in her heart. One rainy afternoon, Emily decided to revisit the neighborhood. She brought along her loyal companion, whom she had named Lucky. The name felt fitting for the dog that had turned her life around. They stopped by the diner, its once familiar neon sign flickering in the drizzle. Through the window, Emily saw Mr. Grayson, his usual scowl etched on his face. The diner looked emptier than she remembered. Emily hesitated. Part of her wanted to walk away and never look back. But another part of her, the part that had always believed in kindness, urged her to step inside. With a deep breath, she pushed open the door. The bell jingled, and Mr. Grayson looked up. His eyes narrowed when he saw her. "You've got some nerve coming back here," he growled. Emily held her ground, Lucky sitting obediently by her side. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said, her voice steady. Mr. Grayson blinked, clearly taken aback. "Thank me? For what?" "For firing me," Emily replied. "It was the push I needed to find something better. Something meaningful." For a moment, silence hung in the air. Then, to Emily's surprise, Mr. Grayson's shoulders slumped. "This place isn't what it used to be," he muttered. "Customers are fewer, and the bills keep piling up. Maybe you were right to care about more than just profits." Emily felt a pang of sympathy. Despite everything, she couldn't help but feel for him. "It's never too late to change," she said gently. "Sometimes, helping others is what brings people back." Mr. Grayson didn't respond, but something in his expression softened. Emily left the diner with a lighter heart, knowing she had planted a seed of hope. As Emily's career flourished, she and Lucky became local heroes. Stories of her selflessness and dedication to animal welfare spread throughout the community. People began reaching out, inspired to help stray animals and volunteer at shelters. Emily's heart swelled with pride every time someone shared their story of rescuing a pet. One day, while Emily was at a company event, she noticed a young girl standing nervously at the edge of the crowd. The girl clutched a scruffy kitten to her chest, her wide eyes scanning the bustling room. Emily knelt down to her level. "Hi there," she said softly. "Is that your kitten?" The girl shook her head. "I found her in a box by the road," she whispered. "I didn't know where else to go." Emily's heart melted. "You did the right thing bringing her here," she said. "Let's make sure she gets the care she needs." As Emily guided the girl to the vet station, she couldn't help but think about how Lucky had brought her to this point. The little stray that had changed her life was now inspiring others to make a difference. It was as if Lucky had become a symbol of hope for everyone who crossed their path. Later that evening, Emily sat in her cozy apartment, Lucky curled up at her feet. She thought about all the animals they had helped and the lives they had touched. She realized that the love she had poured into one small act of kindness had created ripples far beyond anything she could have imagined. One morning, Emily received an email that made her heart skip a beat. It was from a television producer who had heard about her story. They wanted to feature her in a documentary about ordinary people making extraordinary impacts. Emily's initial reaction was disbelief. "Me? On TV?" she said aloud, laughing nervously. But the producer assured her that her story was exactly what people needed to hear. After some deliberation, she agreed. The filming process was surreal. Cameras followed her as she went about her day, capturing her work at the shelter, her interactions with Lucky, and her outreach efforts in the community. Emily felt vulnerable sharing her journey, but she reminded herself of the bigger picture. If her story could inspire just one person to make a difference, it would be worth it. The documentary premiered to overwhelming acclaim. Viewers from all over the world reached out, sharing how her story had touched their hearts. Donations poured into shelters, and adoption rates skyrocketed. Emily couldn't believe the impact her small act of kindness had snowballed into. Just as everything seemed perfect, life threw Emily a curveball. Lucky fell unexpectedly, his energy waning and his appetite disappearing. Emily rushed him to the vet, her heart pounding with fear. The diagnosis was devastating. Lucky had a rare condition that required immediate surgery. The odds were uncertain, but without the procedure, his chances of survival were slim. Emily was shattered. Lucky had been her rock, her inspiration. The thought of losing him was unbearable. She stayed by his side, stroking his fur and whispering words of encouragement. "You're my brave boy," she said, tears streaming down her face. "We'll get through this together." The day of the surgery arrived, and Emily felt like she was holding her breath the entire time. She paced the waiting room, clutching Lucky's favorite toy. Memories of their journey together flooded her mind, each one a reminder of the bond they shared. Hours later, the vet emerged with a tired but reassuring smile. "Lucky's a fighter," he said. "The surgery went well." Relief washed over Emily as she broke into tears. She rushed to Lucky's side, overwhelmed with gratitude. Her brave boy had pulled through, just as she knew he would. Months later, Emily stood on the stage of a packed auditorium, accepting an award for her contributions to animal welfare. As she held the plaque in her hands, she looked out at the audience and saw countless faces, each one reflecting the impact of her journey. "This isn't just my story," she said into the microphone. "It's a story about how one small act of kindness can change the world. Lucky didn't just save me, he inspired me to save others. And now, together, we've created something beautiful." The crowd erupted into applause, and Emily felt a surge of pride. Lucky, now healthy and as lively as ever, barked from the front row, wagging his tail. After the event, Emily returned to the shelter, where a new stray awaited her care. She knelt down, offering it a gentle smile. "Welcome to the family," she said, her heart swelling with love. As she looked into the stray's eyes, Emily knew that her journey was far from over. There were still so many lives to touch, so many stories to write. And with Lucky by her side, she was ready for whatever came next. Months after her award ceremony, Emily's life was as busy as ever. Between her work at the shelter and her new initiatives to educate communities about stray animals, she rarely had a moment to herself. But she loved every second of it. Lucky, ever faithful, accompanied her everywhere, becoming the unofficial mascot of her cause. One sunny afternoon, Emily was hosting a community event at the park. Families, children, and animal lovers gathered, enjoying the activities and learning about adoption. Emily was in the middle of answering questions when she noticed a familiar face in the crowd. It was Clara, her former co-worker from the diner. Clara looked hesitant but excited as she approached. "Emily," she said, her voice trembling. I saw the documentary. I had no idea what you went through. And now, seeing all this, it's incredible." Emily's heart warmed. Clara had been one of the few kind faces at the diner, and seeing her here felt like a full-circle moment. "Thank you, Clara," Emily said, hugging her. "It's been quite a journey, but every step was worth it." Clara's eyes welled up. "You've inspired me," she said. "I've started volunteering at a local shelter, and I've adopted a dog. His name is Maximum." Emily beamed, tears threatening to spill. "That's amazing. I'd love to meet Maximum." As they chatted, Emily realized that her story had planted seeds of kindness and change in ways she never anticipated. Clara's transformation was a testament to the ripple effect of compassion. Just as Emily felt she had found her rhythm, a new challenge arose. A nearby shelter was on the verge of shutting down due to lack of funding. Emily learned about it during a routine meeting with Dr. Harris. The thought of so many animals losing their safe haven filled her with urgency. "We have to do something," Emily said, determination etched on her face. Dr. Harris nodded. "The shelter's director has reached out for help, but raising enough funds in time will be difficult." Emily sprang into action, organizing a massive fundraising campaign. She called on her network, leveraging the attention from her documentary and social media presence. People responded with overwhelming support, sharing the campaign and donating generously. But it wasn't enough. With the deadline approaching, Emily felt the weight of potential failure. One evening, as she sat on her couch with Lucky, she whispered, "What if it's not enough? What if I let them down?" Lucky nuzzled her hand, his quiet presence reminding her why she started this journey. Emily took a deep breath. "No, we're not giving up." In a last-ditch effort, Emily organized a live-streamed event featuring rescued animals and their stories. The emotional appeal touched hearts worldwide, and donations poured in. By the end of the night, they surpassed their goal. The shelter was saved. Once again, Emily saw how a community united by compassion could achieve the impossible. With the shelter crisis resolved, Emily turned her focus to a new idea, Lucky's mission. Inspired by her bond with Lucky, she wanted to create a program that paired rescued animals with people in need, children in hospitals, veterans struggling with PTSD, and lonely CNAs. The program launched with modest beginnings but quickly gained traction. Lucky became the face of the campaign, visiting schools and hospitals to spread joy. Children laughed and hugged him, their smiles brighter than the sun. Veterans found comfort in his gentle presence, and CNAs shared stories of their youth as they petted his soft fur. Emily watched these moments with a full heart. Lucky was more than her companion. He was a healer, a symbol of hope. Through him, she saw the true power of connection. One day, a little boy named Jamie, battling a rare illness, met Lucky at a hospital visit. Jamie had been withdrawn, refusing to interact with anyone. But when Lucky entered the room, Jamie's face lit up. He reached out with trembling hands, and Lucky licked them gently. "Thank you," Jamie's mother whispered, tears streaming down her face. This is the first time he smiled in months. Moments like these solidified Emily's belief in her mission. Lucky's legacy was growing, touching lives in ways she never imagined. Time, however, is a relentless force. As the years passed, Lucky began to slow down. His once bounding energy faded, replaced by a gentle calm. Emily knew their time together was precious, but nothing could prepare her for the inevitable. One quiet evening, Lucky laid his head in Emily's lap, his breath shallow but peaceful. Emily stroked his fur, her tears falling silently. "You've given me everything," she whispered. "I promise I'll keep your mission alive." Lucky's tail wagged faintly, as if he understood. And then, with one last contented sigh, he was gone. Emily's grief was immeasurable, but so was her gratitude. Lucky had been more than a dog. He had been her guide, her inspiration, her family. Through her tears, she vowed to honor him by continuing their work. Years later, Emily stood before a massive crowd at an animal welfare conference. Behind her, a large screen displayed a photo of Lucky, his bright eyes full of life. "Lucky changed my life," Emily began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "He taught me that one small act of kindness can create ripples that touch countless lives. And now, it's our turn to continue those ripples." She spoke about the importance of compassion, urging everyone to take action. Whether it's adopting a pet, volunteering at a shelter, or simply showing kindness to someone in need, you can make a difference. Together, we can create a world where every life, human or animal, is valued and loved. The audience erupted into applause, inspired by her words. After the event, Emily launched a global initiative under Lucky's name, expanding programs for rescue animals and promoting education about animal welfare. As she walked off the stage, Emily felt a sense of peace. Lucky's mission was thriving, his legacy woven into every act of kindness. And though he was no longer by her side, his spirit lived on in her work and in the lives of those he had touched. To everyone watching or reading this, take a moment to think about how you can make a difference. Adopt, volunteer, donate, or simply spread awareness. Every small act counts. Together, we can create a kinder, more compassionate world. Join Lucky's mission today and be part of the change.